Hi, so I wanted to do a follow-up video to the one I did the other day. Got Lilith just creeping in screen here. um, so yeah, I've been working out my thoughts on manifesting, allowing, presence. And yeah, I just share my opinions in these videos and insights that I've had. Obviously, everyone follows their own journey and their own path, and you should never listen to anybody else and take it as truth. I mean, the same with the twin flame journey as well. There's so many people that say they're twin flames, like it's just because they say they are doesn't mean they are. You have to actually the journey, you have to tap into yourself. And it's okay to go and get triggered by various videos or people sharing their opinions or their channelings and insights that they've had, but you ultimately have to pass them through your own filter. Not just blindly be like, oh yeah, they said they're with their twin flame, or they've said they're enlightened, or they've said they feel joy every day. I actually more and more have noticed this. Like, I've seen quite a few people recently that are manifesting teachers and sort of put on this display of certain things, and then you see the real truth behind it was that they were going through just the same stuff that you were. And I get why people don't always say that, because, if you're there to motivate and inspire people, you only want to focus on that side of it. But I do really like seeing the authenticity, actually. And But yeah, you never know what's going on and what people are really feeling. So you're your own radar, and you have to remember that. And I think we've all fallen prey to just like buying into somebody else's methods. But I have been doing a lot of processing and trying to connect to, how I integrate manifesting and presence, and where I think they can both work together. So I was realizing, so a lot of people go around and they say, I am the god of my reality, right? And there's a big thing with everyone is he pushed out Neville Goddard, and I am the creator of my reality, I am God, I am. And I was saying this too, and I was seeing how I was creating stuff. And, when I really went hard with these teachings, I was getting, loads of stuff that I wanted, like people showing up in the way I wanted them. It was working, but ultimately it actually just wasn't fulfilling in the run of trying it. And then I started thinking, well, I am God, but who am I? And that was when I realized that kind of key thing of there's the I, as in I am my soul, and then there's the I as in the ego, identity, personality suit that we're all wearing. And then I realized where are you manifesting from? And I realized that I was manifesting from, and I see a lot of people manifesting from their ego. I want this, I want this, and this will make me happy, and if I have this will make me fulfilled. And it does, and it gives you the boost and it gives you the lift, but then it always ends up ultimately unfulfilling. And it's because you are still seeking outside of yourself and you're manifesting things from your ego. This is where I've gotten to. Anyway, manifesting from the soul is different, and that is your I am God, I am presence. Yeah, your ego can create stuff and it can manifest stuff, but it's generally around control. And when you dig deeper, it generally comes from a feeling of lack or need, or the need in something outside of yourself to make you happy. And manifesting from the soul is more of like a state of presence and kind of trusting in your intuition, because your intuition is your higher self, it's your soul self. So that's why I think there's this bit of a confusion between what am I guided to do versus like I am God, I am the creator of my reality. And I get the confusion, and I've been both sides of that scenario. And then I realized, you're kind of both. Like, I'm guided to isn't anyone outside of you, it's just your higher self. And your higher self is your self most connected to source, God source, like everything. And then I am God's self, as in like, oh, I want like Robert to text me now, that's your ego self, because you're feeling like you desperately want this person to make you happy. Or I am like a billionaire. Like no one can really find, like it's about what's fulfilling and nourishing to your soul versus what your ego wants to feel some kind of way, right? And I think this is where it gets really tricky with relationships, because it's very hard to distinguish sometimes what's nourishing your soul versus what your ego is drawn to, because that feeling of like deep love that we feel as humans is very often our ego wanting to be fulfilled by something that the other has to offer, and we feel it as like this burning love and like huge deep feelings. But actually, definitely from my experience, that isn't actually a feeling of love. That's actually a feeling of needing something, like pining and loving so deeply. And I actually, true love is like it's that like feeling that you have, when you find that feeling inside of yourself where you just feel so much joy and harmony and fulfillment, and then you're just enjoying the moment. It's like a feeling of presence, true love. And then that kind of other really deep love generally has an undertone of pining about it if you really feel into it. And it's because it's kind of that person has something that can fulfill you. And all of these things, it's a real process to kind of work out what's what, like where you're manifesting from. But I felt like when I went too much into I am God of my reality and like trying to control and manipulate things too much and like micromanage manifestations, I found that I was getting what I wanted, but then like it wasn't ultimately fulfilling, or it wouldn't last, and your soul is always running the show, and yeah, your ego can get in the way for a bit, but ultimately your soul is always the guide. It knows when something isn't deeply fulfilling for you, and I do honestly believe that it will take it out of the way, or really try and give you the signs that it's not the right thing for you, because ultimately you're always trying to get into alignment with your soul, and your soul is your I am, is your God presence. And this to me is what the sort of the wheel of karma is, and how you get off it. It's by aligning to your soul and making choices that are based on alignment and love rather than on ego choices. But it is really hard. I mean, like, don't judge yourself for making them. It's really hard to try and distinguish between what's what, because the ego is really tricky, and things can feel like they're genuine, but there was an ego veil there, which is why I think in my last video, I was really big on working through the ego veils, acknowledging, your ego and integrating it. And like, I still feel this is really important because it helps you tap into your intuition. I noticed that when I was doing a lot of manifesting and I was really, I am God, and I was creating and I was getting things I wanted, I actually lost touch with my intuition because I actually was believing my ego self to be the God self, and I was losing connection to my true higher self. So when you're tapping into that intuition, it's not like, oh, I'm tapping into some angel or some guide or some God source, it's just tapping into your highest version of yourself, which has a much better overview really of the way to make you happy and fulfilled in your life. And the more we sort of like block it unfolding with our ego and trying to control and manipulate, the more we're slowing that manifestation down, that will bring us ultimate fulfillment. So I think it's really important to just accept what is, which is something that I've really been feeling lately. Is accepting what is huge, like having no judgment to what is, and accepting the now at face value is just being grateful for what is, and finding gratitude in what is, and being present, because your soul, your real God source, knows what it is that you ultimately desire and what will bring you ultimate fulfillment. And I think one way to know is to just really, in each moment, to ask yourself, like, is this truly fulfilling me? And I think the same thing can actually be done from ego and from the soul. Like, say, for example, I'm painting, I can be genuinely connected to myself while I'm painting and just enjoying the process, and then selling my paintings. Or I can be doing it from ego, because I can be painting and thinking, oh, I need to be a successful painter. Is my work good enough? As soon as I start to get all that head noise in, then I'm creating from the ego and I'm not creating from my soul. So I'm creating from, so both create at the end of the day, but it's just one is going to be ultimately more fulfilling because it's going to be in alignment with your true self and your true happiness, and the other is like a form of control. And I noticed this in relationships as well. This video is going to be all over the place because it's like a recap of where I've been the last 2 months, so I'm kind of just talking about everything. And I really observed a lot in soul connections. I mean, first of all, you've got the runner-chaser dynamic, which is just inside of you. Like, while you have duality activated, so you inside of you have a runner and a chaser, and the other person is just basically showing you the outer embodiment of your inner self. So if you are getting somebody that like is running away, that's because your energy is chasing them. Even if you're not communicating, even if you're not talking to them, your energy is chasing them. And then if they're chasing you and they're really obsessive with you, that's because you fear and being engulfed, right? And both the runner and the chaser, they're just afraid of intimacy. It's a match. It's not like one person really wants a relationship and the other person doesn't, because they're probably off out. The runner is off out chasing some other unavailable person, because really none of them can face themselves. And actually, true vulnerability and intimacy is super scary. And people can have like relationships for their whole life and never be truly vulnerable and truly intimate. And that's what these strong soul connections are. They're like I remember when I met my first really strong soul connection, it was it triggered my, I don't actually think it's rejection, because I'm actually okay with rejection, but it's kind of around the area. But I think it's more like sort of valued and special. Because if I actually get rejected, then I was cool with that. It was allowing myself to be rejected. Like, expressing myself and and being rejected. Once the rejection happened, actually, I was all right with it. It was that making myself vulnerable in the expression where I could lose all my pride and be rejected. So I actually managed nearly all of my 20s without ever being rejected. Ever. Period. And the reason for that was because I never allowed myself to be rejected. I never put myself in an uncomfortable situation. If I was at a party and I actually liked somebody, I would purposely try to set them up with another person because I didn't want to get rejected. I was like the most avoidant person you could ever meet because I could not bear allowing myself to get rejected. And then I met my first super, super strong connection in my late 20s, and it was like, hey, you can't do this anymore. And it was this connection that just, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was like after we met, it was like they ripped my soul out and I felt this physical pulling. It wasn't just like, oh, I couldn't stop thinking about them. It was like physical. I had my Kundalini awakening, I just went through that, like can't get them out of my head even for a second, couldn't sleep. Like all I could do was pretty much like go and do the odd job. And then I couldn't wait just to get home and just like sit on the bed and cry. I cried everywhere in public, which before that I actually never cried in public ever. I got over that fear around that time because I cried everywhere. But that connection was that one that was like, and I think this will happen to almost everybody that has that kind of twin flame experience or awakener person. They were like, you are not going to avoid this anymore and live this shitty half life. Excuse my French there. You're going to deal with your issue. And I was like, I couldn't. I'm the proudest person. I would manage like 3 months and then I just have to message and nothing was getting anywhere. And it got to the point where I just had no choice and I was so heavily guided. It was like, I had no life until I could express my feelings and get rejected. Literally, I think I pushed it to, the levels, but that was part of my awakening. You have to go through, and I think that's what these awakening connections do. So everything gets way more intense. So this whole runner chaser dynamic, everyone's experiencing it in life, but it's like when you meet one of these connections, it's amplified and you feel it all the time energetically. So it's not as simple as just, oh, they've not responded to you and it's drove you mad. When it's a spiritual connection, you can just feel when their energy pulls back a bit. So it triggers your energy and you're like, and you're crying on your bathroom floor. And but I realized that all these things that we do are just to control and stay in control so that we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable and intimate. And there's so many ways that we stay in control. We, like by chasing, by begging, by just by being generally unavailable, is we are staying in control. And people have all different like weird and wonderful techniques for staying in control. I feel like this is a big problem. I don't want to say problem because everything's there for a reason, but this is a big thing with dating apps. I don't go on dating apps. Never. I think I went on them once and I was just totally unavailable because I was just desperately trying to get over this first connection, which is really the problem. Everybody's on there and they're kind of using them as like an avoidance technique for true intimacy because it's like, oh, I have 5 people on the go at one time. And then if one person, like my favorite, I don't know, I've never felt connections to more than one person at a time. Maybe some people do, but me and any friend I've ever had has never been like truly deeply connected to multiple people. I'd say if you are, drop them all because they're not the one. But it's this kind of safety mechanism of, oh, but if it doesn't work with that one, then there's all these people that still, floating around and giving me validation and making me feel really good. And then there's this thing that if something doesn't work out, it's like straight back in the pool, rather than like take the time out to actually heal and work on myself and wonder why these relationships were not working out. It's like back in the pool. And, you know, I'm just being a bit humorous about it, but they are all ways that we use to just stay in control and not be vulnerable and not like be truly intimate. But the thing is, if you're getting any of this reflection back, if you've got a runner and whatever, then you are afraid of it yourself. You know, you can only attract what you are. It's just that it's polarized, which is what makes it tricky, because you're like, yeah, but I want them and they don't want me. But on an energetic level, you're not available, because while you're chasing and like not in alignment with yourself, and you're coming from like a lack mentality and a fear mentality. But it's not just, you know, it's not just the mind. Unfortunately, when you have these really strong connections, it's energetic. So just feeling it pull away is enough to trigger, you know. Hence why it's so much work to come into balance and into inner alignment. But that is the way to go. So this is like a really jumbled, hashed up video of all the insights that I've had over the last like while. But yeah, where do I feel on all this? I tell you why I question it all so much as well, is because me and my friend were working on a daily journal that helps people kind of reconnect to themselves and just create their best life. So I'm like the tester of all different things so that I can, you know, work out what's really, truly things that are fulfilling. And with manifesting, it's a tricky one, because there's elements of it that I think are good. But there's a lot of it that I think can keep you trapped in sort of the ego cycle. And I think there's this thing with I am God. Like, yeah, we are God, but as soul. And I think there's this big thing now with calling our ego God. And that's where things in manifesting become not so like fulfilling and nourishing, I believe. And it's why people can have everything they want in the world and still not be happy. You know, you can have all the money and a partner or whatever, but if it's not coming from a true soul aligned place, and you know, it's your energy at the end of the day that creates, and it's not really these things that you want. You want to feel love, you know, you want to feel love, and you want to feel like enjoyment, and you want to feel fulfilled and nourished, and you want to feel like the things that you're doing are nourishing for your soul. And anything else is just going to only be temporarily fulfilling. And I mean, go and play around, because, you know, we're free to do whatever. We chose to be able to explore unlimited ego and play around with things, but I don't believe that manifesting things from that level of control is ever going to be deeply fulfilling and nourishing to us as souls. And I also believe the place you're manifesting from is super important. Like, if you're manifesting from presence, you're manifesting from God state, true God state, which is your soul manifesting. And it's really just about observing and really being honest about what you want, the feelings behind what you want, why you want it. And it is a bit of a journey, you know, we kind of learn as we manifest. But I think if something isn't happening for you that you've manifested, like, it's a really good thing to just be like, do you know what? I'm just going to accept it as it is and trust that there's something better to come. Because actually, I think when you do that, if that thing's meant for you, that's when it'll come anyway, because you're letting go of the lack and you know, the non-pure intentions around it. And then if it's yours, it'll come back. Or maybe, you know, when you're truly in alignment, that isn't the most nourishing thing for you. And yeah, you can create it, but your soul knows there's something that's deeper and more fulfilling in store for you. So yeah, I'll try and make these videos into something more digestible. I just really wanted to say it all before I forgot, because I tend to get all these insights and then I just write them as notes, and I have to try and make videos before I forget. Um, but yeah, I hope everybody is well, and bye.